973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, delighted to have you with me today. We got to begin with the breaking news. Lisa Cook's lawyers have run to court to say that Donald Trump cannot fire her from the Federal Reserve. I actually suspect he can, but in the process, I'm increasingly concerned that due to social media, the right is playing with fire. And let me just back up. A lot of people on the right diagnose social media, particularly Twitter back in the day, as being a social contagion for the left's thinking. The left started saying these outlandish things on social media and intensely began bullying people on their own side into shutting up any dissent. And ultimately, it led the left into embracing nonsensical positions like boys should be okay in girls' bathrooms and boys should be allowed in girls' sports. And in their bubble where they silenced any dissent internally, they had no pushback, and they began to believe it was such a great thing. They tried to mainstream it, and the public pushed back against them. I'm afraid the right is doing this, and I want to use Lisa Cook as a point here, because I actually think that Lisa Cook can be fired by the President of the United States. She serves on the Federal Reserve Board of Governors. She was put there by Joe Biden. She's the first black woman on the Federal Reserve's board, and that has a lot to do with why the Federal Reserve has kind of turned a blind eye internally to some of Cook's problems. The Trump administration has produced documents accusing her of mortgage fraud, saying she claimed two different houses as her main residence in 2021 to get better loan terms. They've referred it to the Justice Department. Now, there are two other people, Letitia James and Adam Schiff, that Bill Pult has made these accusations against. The president said Cook needed to resign. She didn't resign, and now he's decided he's going to fire her. Here's the thing. I think the president can fire members of the Federal Reserve to an extent. He can certainly fire the chairman. We're in uncharted legal territory here. Here's my problem with this one, and hear me out. And a lot of the base is really mad at me today for speaking up and saying this is a bad idea. What do we have? We actually have an accusation. The evidence on which the accusation is based looks very bad for Lisa Cook, but it's an accusation. You don't have to have a criminal proceeding to fire Lisa Cook, I don't believe. But I think you have to have more than an accusation. There needs to be a finding. Who's to say the documents produced by the Trump administration are legit? Now, you and I think so because we trust the Trump administration. We don't think they would forge documents. But who's the arbiter to say that they're legitimate documents? Now, you see, this is why I think you're thinking short term here. Let's do President Newsom or Buttigieg or President Harris, who decides they want to take over the Federal Reserve. And so here they come with documents that show mortgage fraud. Who's to say those documents are legit? You wouldn't believe them. You would think they're trumped up. You would think that that no one has affirmed that this is real stuff. You would say this is an effort by them to take over the Federal Reserve, that it's an inappropriate breach. If the standard applies to one, it's got to apply to the other. I think the president, for cause, can get rid of a member of the Federal Reserve Board. Frankly, I think the Federal Reserve Board, based on these allegations itself, should investigate Lisa Cook. And I think, frankly, a lot of them don't want to because she's the first black member, and they don't want accusations of racism against the Federal Reserve, and Trump doesn't care. I think the evidence looks bad, but no one's verified the documents are real. It's an accusation. ProPublica piled on Clarence Thomas and Sam Alito and others on the Supreme Court to try to pressure them out of cases, to resign, or to be impeached. And it was just accusations. And people on the right said these are just accusations to create an appearance of impropriety. It's very easy in politics to create appearances of impropriety. If you're going to use the appearance of impropriety standard, be prepared for the left to do it to you. Again, it's a short-term play that has long-term, deeply negative ramifications for the right. There's no such thing as permanence in politics. If you establish the precedent now that the president can fire a member of the Federal Reserve because the president's team makes an accusation and says there's something bad, not only do we upend the whole idea that you're innocent until proven guilty, which is a bedrock foundational principle within American governance, but you also set the left up to trump up charges on the right and do the same thing. And you're saying, well, but the charges are legitimate. Yeah, because you trust your side. I trust our side. I don't think the Trump administration is manufacturing these documents. I don't think they're forging the documents. I totally think that people on the left would forge the documents to out someone from the Federal Reserve who's on the right. But if the standard is we've got the documents, here they are, you're fired, well, then who's to stop them from forging the documents on the left and firing the person before any arbiter has said, yeah, the docs are legit? It's a dangerous standard here. It's also, by the way, why the Federal Reserve should have been very careful about policing and regulating its own, which the Federal Reserve can do. They've set themselves up for this. Now, here's how this is probably going to play out. I suspect she's going to have there's the interest rate cut vote in September. She's now run to court to say Trump can't fire her. She's going to find a sympathetic judge in D.C. to say you're right. And there will be a hearing and it will be dragged out and it won't really matter. And she'll probably get through the vote in September and then see what happens. I just think that we're playing with fire on the right when we don't think about the long-term ramifications of how we're emboldening the other side. And I pointed this out on social media. And people were, "Whoa, surprise, surprise, the Democrats trump up charges." Give me an example of the Democrats making accusations against a Republican on the Federal Reserve. Now, here's what this is all about, actually, is that a lot of people, myself included, don't believe the Federal Reserve is a constitutional entity. I don't. I think the government of the United States is divided into three branches: legislative, executive, and judicial. And Congress created the Federal Reserve as an independent board. It gets a lot of its own funding the way it does business. The president can appoint certain members. Most of them the president is not allowed to appoint. They're appointed by a Federal Reserve Board of Governors, or they're appointed by the different banks to the Federal Reserve Board. The president doesn't really get a say, except in a couple of people, including the chairman of the Federal Reserve. There's a lot of distance, and I don't believe the founders intended for that to be set up. That being said, I don't think the Supreme Court's going to go along with it. They've already just sua sponte on their own in a recent case acknowledged the independence of the Federal Reserve Board. It wasn't even relative to the case, and they felt the need to say it. The Supreme Court's going to tell me I'm wrong and you're wrong on the constitutionality or lack thereof of the Federal Reserve. And what they say matters, not what you and I say. I can say the Constitution is divided into three branches: legislative, executive, and judicial. It doesn't fit either one, any of those. Therefore, it's unconstitutional. The Supreme Court's going to say, Congress has the right to create these quasi-independent agencies. Also, the people who are most committed to destroying the Federal Reserve have the benefit of being committed to something that they actually know isn't going to happen. That's one of the funny things in politics these days. A lot of people stake out strident positions with the luxury of knowing their position is never going to happen. They can radicalize you to their position, including getting rid of the Federal Reserve, knowing it's not going to happen. When the Supreme Court comes out and says the Fed is independent and you can't fire the Federal Reserve chairman, Mr. President, when that's not even at stake before the court, I can guarantee you the Supreme Court's not going to strike down the Federal Reserve, and they're going to maintain its independence. And so you can go mouth off about the Federal Reserve all you want with the luxury of knowing that you're not going to get your way. What happens if you do get your way? Then monetary policy in the United States of America becomes at the whim of politicians. And there are plenty of examples, including Great Britain in the 1980s before some Thatcher reforms, that show how destabilizing it is when you have monetary policy set by the politicians. Y'all, we are electing some of the dumbest people in America to politics. New York has elected Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Minnesota has elected Ilhan Omar. Georgia has elected Marjorie Taylor Greene. Do you really want those people setting your monetary policy? When you let the politicians do it, you're letting the popular idiots set monetary policy, which is actually globally integrated and connected, and you should actually want some expertise in setting your monetary policy. The independence of central banks has kind of become the hallmark of Western democracies. It sets them apart from the communist totalitarian states, and it makes the American economy much stronger than economies elsewhere in the world, including China. The Chinese Communist Party controls its central bank. Our central bank is relatively independent with certain checks and balances, including the ability of the president to fire people for cause. But cause has got to be more than an accusation. Otherwise, the Democrats are going to have a field day firing all of Trump's appointees to the Federal Reserve in the future. Remember, when Biden came in, he fired a lot of Trump appointees to independent boards, and there was nothing to really stop him. You break down the chain of command here, and you expand the door to firing the Federal Reserve, you're going to have a completely Democrat-controlled Federal Reserve when the Democrats come back in power. You got to be careful how you play the game. It's like the president of the flag burning. We all know that burning the flag is actually constitutional. People on the right are saying, I saw Matt Walsh the other day say, I'll believe that this is something bad when people stop getting arrested for burning pride flags. No one in America has gotten arrested for burning their own pride flag. No one in America has gotten arrested for burning their own trans flag. They've gotten arrested for stealing other people's flags and burning those. Yeah, I think the sentences are ludicrous. I personally think hate crimes legislation should be unconstitutional. Thoughts should not be crimes in the United States, and that's what a hate crime is. It's basically criminalization of a thought crime. But that's different from saying you can burn an American flag, but you can't burn a pride flag. You can go get your own pride flag and burn it, and you're not going to get arrested. But what Trump has done is he's based this on the fighting words doctrine, which the Supreme Court has greatly restrained. Trump wants to take an expansive view of the fighting words doctrine again. Again, short-term gain, long-term pain. Charlie Kirk, Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, others have made a name for themselves going on college campuses and speaking, and then documenting the angry reaction of the left. You go on college campuses now, you incite the left to get angry, you're going to get arrested. That's what they're doing in Great Britain. Great Britain has an expansive fighting words doctrine. They just arrested someone the other day for waving an English flag. It made Muslims in the community feel uncomfortable, and the police told the guy to stop or go to jail. You expand the fighting words doctrine in the United States to stop the burning of the American flag, you're getting a lot of conservatives arrested for going on college campuses and inciting the left. Short-term gain, long-term pain. People are thinking emotionally about this. They're not thinking logically where this stuff heads. I think the president of the United States can fire Lisa Cook from the Federal Reserve. And I think the evidence presented is very damning, and there needs to be a review to see if this is legitimate, and if it is, she should be fired. But we're not there yet. We're at an accusation. We don't know that the documents are legitimate. We presume they are because we're allies on the same side, and we don't think they would make that stuff up. But we don't give the Democrats that benefit of the doubt, and they're not going to give us the benefit of the doubt. So there's got to be some way to assess this. The Federal Reserve should have done something in-house, but we're setting precedents on the right that the left is going to use. And for everyone who comes back and says, well, the left is already doing this, show me the example of them doing this to the Federal Reserve. Show me the example of them doing this in these situations. You do have to nuance these. It's not all of this or all of that. There are lines in between, and those legal lines matter to protect us when we're not in power. The process matters because one day we will not be in charge of the White House. And if we start breaking down the process and the courts allow us to get away with it, the left will do it to us. That's why the process matters so much, and it's painful, and it's slow, and we don't always get our way, and that's the way the system is supposed to work. If it doesn't, well, then it's a free-for-all every time, and we're no better than some third-world kleptocracy, which is where we head if we continue to break down the rule of law and the process and disrespect the Constitution and the separation of powers, all because we just want to fight the other side.
Have something to say? Call the show. 1-877